euer dreckiges Lachen vergeht, wenn ihr euer eigenes Blut fließen seht. Die Waffengemeinschaft Germaniens steht, für ein Entkommen ist es jetzt zu spät.
I've got one that can see.
Wanneer there's donder, there's bliksem. Ik ben John Nada. Welcome to the Days of Thunder. I am John Nada. I saw something posted the other day on the MGTOW Reddit, and I couldn't find the picture. But then when I remembered what the picture was of, I thought, well, I'm not going to bore the audience by reading off this particular meme or whatever. But basically, you've probably seen it. You can Google it and get the gist of the idea. But it ties into something that I've been thinking about here over the course of, a year or so. It basically boils down to wait for the guy that does this, wait for the guy that does A, B, and C, wait for this guy, wait for that guy. And it's this laundry list of things that, quote unquote romantic things that, you should wait for this guy that does this romantic thing, or you should wait for the guy that does that romantic thing. And so in the meantime, of course, the implication is that they're not out there seeking that guy out. They're not putting any kind of effort into finding that guy or meeting that guy. They're simply waiting around passively for that guy to show up, almost as the court gesture to entertain the royalty and royal guests, and to do a good enough job, auditioning that now he gets the role of being the girl's boyfriend. And so in the meantime, while she's waiting for that guy, she's of course riding the cock carousel and dating the bad boy with the motorcycle and the tattoos and the rap sheet and so on and so forth. And it's not until she's been more or less used up and lost a lot of her looks and on the verge of hitting the wall that she then decides to give this guy, who's probably been in the background orbiting this entire time, the time of day. Now all of a sudden he's good enough. Now all these bad boys, she's learned from her mistakes and all this. And essentially it then becomes incumbent upon the guy that she has been quote unquote waiting for, that's going to do all these nice and wonderful things for her and make her feel special and give her security and provision. Now it is his responsibility to overlook and to basically alleviate her from any responsibility of past mistakes that she made. And one thing I've noticed is a lot of these women never really deal with the underlying issue. And I think I said it in the other video. A woman would rather be in a bad relationship. A woman would rather be with somebody that hits them than they would to be alone with themselves long enough to do any kind of introspection. As men, we are forced to do introspection. As men, we are forced to improvise, adapt, and overcome. Because the reality of it is, and it's been said time and time again, society does not care about men. Society does not care about you. You are a disposable utility in the eyes of the gynocracy. And so then it becomes imperative that you find a way through things. You find a way to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You find a way to not only survive, but thrive. So a lot of guys, and not all guys, but a lot of guys develop this deep sense of self, this inner strength that they call upon. And most women, particularly some that I've dated in the past, become very codependent on their significant other. They don't really care about the guy himself. They don't really like the guy himself. It could be any guy, because again, it's a mix and match, plug and play. That doesn't matter. As long as the security is provided, as long as a certain feeling is provided, resources are provided, as long as I don't have to look at myself, stand on my own 2 feet, and deal with my own issues and come to terms with myself, essentially. And I saw not too long ago, it's almost the Tinkerbell effect. If I don't get attention, I die. And that describes many of the women that I've dated in the past. that, but again, it's all about attention for them. It never speaks of, and just like I was talking about earlier, wait for the guy that does A, B, and C. Never is it ever spoken of what the girl does for the guy. It's always about, my boyfriend is so wonderful because he makes me feel this way, or A, B, C, and D, whatever. But it's never really about him as a person. It's never really about his character. She's never really interested in him because his sole role and focus is to provide her with attention, to provide her with security. And so, but it never speaks of what she brings to the table other than, I guess it's implied that sex is brought to the table. But at the end of the day, you're kind of admitting that sex is the only thing that the majority of women are good for. That's the only thing they really bring to the table. And so then therefore that's really the only reason that men should be interested in them to begin with. Or either that, or you're saying that most women are so vapid and narcissistic that they don't, that it's not about the guy. It's not about his personhood or individuality. And that's the other thing. If you've ever done this, if you've ever dated somebody like this where they just needed constant 24-hour round the clock attention, I mean, how can you have any personhood? How can you have any individuality? How can you develop yourself as a person and as an individual when you're constantly having to see to the needs of somebody else who refuses to take responsibility for their own happiness, their own inner peace, and their own self-development? They basically, the majority of women nowadays, or maybe it's always been this way, treat men or treat the guys that they're with as an accessory, as a status, as almost like a supplement. And the focus, of course, goes back to them, that the man must revolve around them as the planets do the sun. And so, it was this thought that it's just like, even if you're in a relationship with somebody, and I'm seeing this with some people I know personally, they're in these relationships, but they're putting all the work in. They're the only one that is really, like, it's not a mutual effort on both ends. They're putting all the work in, and all the woman is doing is just showing up and reaping the benefits. It's as if like a farmer spends all year planting and harvesting crops. He plants the crops by the almanac. He plants plants the crops, and he cultivates them, and he waters them, and he tills, and he does all those things necessary. And then it is as if somebody, the day that they're harvested, you harvest the plants, and you're going to have this big meal, and you invite some guests over, and it's as if you do all this work, and one of the guests simply just shows up to the dinner as if they had a hand in it, taking credit for it. When in reality, the other 364 days of the year, they were nowhere in the field, and they just showed up for that one day. And that's what's so funny about, especially because Valentine's Day is coming up. So, you're going to see, people getting flowers and all this kind of business going on, and the advertisement and all that. And it's all to go say, I couldn't do it without you, sweetheart. And you do so much in my life and all that. But again, it's the farmer analogy. The guy is the farmer. Year round, he's been putting in all the effort, planning all the dates, planning all the trips, buying all these gifts, coming up with this whirlwind adventure to keep this woman interested. And one day out of the year, she shows up and, oh, you're so wonderful, sweetheart. I couldn't do it without you. Life would be so meaningless without you. And yet life is meaningless in the situation that the majority of these people are in, because they've totally lost all sense of self. They've totally lost all sense of any growth of self. And they've lost themselves in this other person and in this relationship that they have with them. And really, they have no personhood in this person's eyes. Easily replaceable. Could find if you're a female, even if you're one that has, approached the wall a little bit closer and maybe lost some of your looks, you're still constantly getting all kinds of options and and guys are still constantly throwing themselves at you. So, again, it goes back to what I was saying in an earlier video about sinking sand. These guys that are in these relationships, they find, I think a lot of them probably realize they really aren't all that fulfilled. I think a lot of them probably wish there was more to it than what they're getting out of it. But at the end of the day, I think that a lot of guys, rather than walk away from it, just accept it, for the occasional romp in the sack or I guess whatever kudos or points they get. Look at me, I've got a girlfriend or whatever. But it really, and I've said this before, and this is no great revelation, and I'm certainly not the first one that has said this, but it's never really spoken of what women offer or bring to the table that is minus, or divorced from their sexuality. It's never about what the woman, how the woman can support the man in his time of need. It's never about, the guy waiting for the girl that's gonna do A, B, and C, and these women, again, they don't want these guys, when they're young and have a lot to offer, I guess, in that respect. They don't want those guys when they're just getting all kinds of male attention thrown at them. It's only when the male attention fetters off that these guys are even good enough to look at. And a lot of them don't even realize it. They don't make the connection. They don't see that it's casting pearls before swine. Now, and that's the thing. A lot of these guys have done the right thing, quote unquote, their entire life. They saved their money. They pursued their education. They were studying while these girls were out partying. And again, it's the farmer analogy. These guys have done the right thing. They've set their life up to some extent. Not all of them, but a lot of them. They wiped out a lot of their debt. And now comes the girl that wouldn't give them the time of day, 2 or 3 years before, to reap the benefits of that. Please pay my college debt off. Anytime you end up mixed up with somebody, whether you live with them or you get married to them, their debt then becomes your debt. And a lot of guys are more than happy to take on this girl's debt. This same girl that would have had nothing to do with them and laughed at them and mocked them and everything else. So again, I ask you, MGTOW, we all have our story. We all have our reasons for why we're going our own way. And a lot of it for me is that this person simply doesn't exist. And that is the fallacy, and that is the downfall of the majority of men out there. They think they're going to find this person that is going to truly care about them, truly care about their interests, truly be devoted and loyal to them, and stick by them to the end through thick and thin, sickness and in health. This life partner, this person that is going to ensure that they don't die alone. And yet we all die alone, or a lot of us die alone. We come into the world alone. And it's simply nothing more than an illusion and a fantasy. And this is what I've been saying. Like I said, this is nothing new. I've been preaching the same gospel from the very beginning up until now. And it's that realization and that acceptance. And the fact is some people will never accept it. And not only will they not ever accept it, but they will fight you tooth and nail and say that you're the heretic. But all I've ever done is speak the truth about it. And that's all you'll ever get from John Nada. And that's all you're ever going to hear on the Days of Thunder is the truth. The pure, unadulterated truth about the reality of things. Well, as always, if you don't like the program, don't listen. This has been John Nada. This has been the Days of Thunder. And remember, you are free to do as you're told. Tot ziens.